So hi, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's vlog. I've kind of been listening to another one of Matthew Syed's books this week, and thanks to Daniela Wainwright for the recommendation. This one's Rebel Ideas, and interestingly, it talks about making sure you have diverse people within your organisations and how those allow kind of innovation to breed and make sure that you kind of keep evolving as an organisation. Kind of examples where this has occurred is Silicon Valley, where in the early days before it became the big entity it is now, they were looking to build out kind of businesses, and a lot of people used to meet in locations who worked for a variety of organisations, share ideas and grow, and that's really how the Silicon Valley that we know today was born. Interestingly, one of such session gave birth to the company that we know today as Apple. So just it kind of shows how that kind of environment of cross sharing and all those kind of things and dealing with different people from different backgrounds and cultures brings in that right kind of thing to your organization. The interesting thing though, and obviously you see this, organisations that are small have very different kind of management styles to perhaps the bigger ones that we know and love and many of us work for. So I thought I'd spend a bit of time today looking at the number of different styles of kind of management and leadership that exist within an organisation, and kind of how those can foster the organisational growth and kind of give you kind of what you need. In order to do this, I kind of will look at a number of different things, types of management style, and also asking, do certain organisations suit certain management style types, and also, or even kind of even more specific than that, do certain areas of a business require a different type of management. So I guess the first one is this kind of concept of management styles, and one of the things that Matthew refers to quite openly in his book is this concept of there are two different styles of leader. The ones who lead by what we'll call dominance, where they demand deference, and the effectively the anchor of it is the person asking to be respected. And the other one is what they call prestige managements, where people earn the respect of those around them and people choose to give it. Interestingly, that dominant style is one which very much occurs ironically, it's one that humans use, but also its generic basis is out of the animal kingdom, and you always know that there's a prime in the ape community and things like that. The other prestige management style is very much embedded in humans, and that on its own is enough to say that separates us in a lot of ways from the other kind of animals. This concept that people are able to choose and give who they want. Interestingly, I remember reading a book, *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari, and what he was saying was a lot of kind of talking about belief structures and how those have influenced the growth of the human race as we know it. And interestingly, in the old world, it was very much the case that the church commanded respect, almost it asked for it in a dominant manner from the people around it. Whereas as we've grown and evolved as a set of human beings, and organisations, are fundamentally based on a belief structure in the same way as the church is. So as we've moved to things like the stock market and things like that, those are bought into through we choose to follow those as opposed to having a dominance on it that's dictated by someone else. And I thought that was a really interesting comparison as to how these things hang together. Ultimately, out of those two different types of style come the 5 different kind of management styles that we kind of recognise in the world. The first one's authoritarian, top-down decision making. What's said is done. The second is democratic, so involving team members in decisions and all those kind of things. The third is the laissez-faire approach, and where effectively it's like, right, okay, you hands off, you go and get on with it, you do what you need to do. The fourth is transformational, where you inspire and motivate your team. And the last is what they refer to as servant leadership, where you put your teams first and you drive through those. It's quite interesting because I always see, and I'm a very, very firm believer in the servant leadership methodology, but I wouldn't want to confuse that with doing what your employees or members of your team ask you to do. Servant leadership is about leading from the front from a strategy perspective, but then being behind your team to allow and help them to achieve their goals. That one in particular works for me, it works in a sales environment where you need to be out there clearing the problems, setting strategy, but below that you need to be making sure your team are supported in the right way. But interestingly, I kind of got to thinking when I was kind of looking at the stuff above, and I kind of started thinking, well, actually, I prefer this as my management style, but is that something that necessarily applies in all cases, in all types of organisation? And I kind of, let's look at a creative industry, for example, where it's such as advertising or things like that, where perhaps a more laissez-faire approach to things and allowing people to succeed based on their own. A lot of people contract into those types of organisations, and ultimately they choose to work there, and the people who manage in them have very little control over what the people are doing. So that's kind of one area where something like my servant leadership model might not work. Large organisations with hierarchical structures, for example, may need a more structured management style, where smaller orgs thrive on collaboration and democracy. So again, you see different types of things based on organisational size. I see it quite interestingly in the different types of organisation I work with, where you can see at a top layer, how people are guiding people, but also people are allowed to make decisions on their own. So it's really kind of interesting to see how that dynamic works and seeing how both large and small organisations structure. And then probably the last one I'll cover here, although there are many other organisation types, is what I'll call a regulated industry. And this is one where, although much as I wouldn't want to say it, but something like an aircraft carrier, for example, or even a police force, it needs to be kind of managed with authority because there are a set of rules and regulations that have to be kind of led. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be kind of encouraging people to have fun and doing things like that, but there has to be a command and control mechanism, because ultimately when someone makes a decision, it has to be driven through and led. So the one consideration I've not taken into account there, talking about things at an organisational level, is that actually perhaps it's not the organisation level where the different management styles need to sit. It's perhaps, and if you look at organisations where the structure is set by history, perhaps it's a case that those different organisations are bred like that. Now, in those types of organisations, changing anything is actually really hard work, and it will take years to get that through. But then if you look at it inside an organisation, there are different areas of the business, and in some cases, different areas require a different management style, or perhaps they do. So let's look at it. Sales teams, they require motivation to hit targets. Transformational leadership really brings those people through. You back the people in your organisation, you drive innovation, and you breed a positive culture that drives people to kind of sell and succeed. Finance is often a more regulated place, so perhaps it's there, a more authoritative style based on the regulations that you have to meet and things like that. And then customer service, obviously more servant-led, as in the people there ultimately have to own the customer relationship, but they need to be backed from behind in order to be able to do that. So again, you've got the fact that perhaps different organisations have different styles, but you've then got the fact that different departments have different management styles within it. So I guess the research that I've done here and stuff is, I'm a firm believer still in servant leadership and how this enables both innovation and fosters problem solving. But I do find myself questioning it, as I've said kind of before, as to how it works in other areas of the organisation. Rebel Ideas actually gives a view that organisations with widespread diversity in their population actually make better decisions overall. But the only way that works is when all people have a voice to speak. So I think regardless of the organisational management style and structure, an organisation only works when people have the ability to be open and honest in conversation, both ways. Radical Candor, which is a book I've referenced before in the vlog, it's very much a case in that they talk a lot about ensuring that it encourages you to be open, but that openness has to be both ways. So ensuring people have the ability to speak and bring their ideas forward, regardless of what the management style is, always should and has a place in the organisation. And then I guess finally I'll draw from the Arnold Schwarzenegger book, Be Useful, which I've kind of referenced a number of times before, where he said he's quite often offended by people who call him a self-made person. The reason for that is no one is self-made. So to some extent, it doesn't matter what your management and leadership style at the top is. You need to acknowledge and take account that it's all the people below you who help that organisation to succeed. It's never a one person in one place in that organisation who will allow it to succeed. Thanks very much for listening today or watching today. If you're interested in more, please kind of click subscribe. I'm always happy to hear people's views on this stuff, and always happy to get people thinking about, get people's thoughts on how they feel about the different leadership styles that are out there. Thanks very much, and I'll speak to you again soon.